the great Kadampa master, their way of according to their system, before giving any teachings, one needs to reflect on impermanence. Uh, from one side, if when we talk about the death and impermanence, then it might create certain kind of sadness or unhappiness. But if you look at impermanence from one side, one aspect, it's not just remembering or reminding ourselves of death, but to understand that the life is very important. It's not just the life, but each day is important, each hour and each minute is important, because life is every moment, and so every moment, each minute has the value of life. So if we kind of waste 1 minute, we also waste part of the life. So therefore, understanding of the impermanence is very important. So we have to look in towards ourselves, towards our mind, and think about impermanence. Like how to we have to consider each day like a whole life. For instance, when we get up, it's similar that we are born. When we wash our face, it's like when we are bathed after being born. When we eat our breakfast, then it's like giving the child or baby the first food, like then slowly getting older. So when we go to bed, then like similar to death. So if you look at one day as a whole life, that's also, there's a system like that. So when we look at life, then each minute is passing, and each minute passed means it's gone. So if you really want to make our life meaningful and purposeful, we have to make this day, today, now, at this moment when we are in this seat, we have to make it useful and purposeful. If we just think about tomorrow, day after tomorrow, I'll do it, then we waste our life. And especially these times, the degenerate time, there's so many causes of death, and we never know any certainty when we are going to die. And especially there are so many causes to be born, like even if we are traveling by car or train or plane, all of them can cause us death. They are all dangerous. Some are more dangerous, some are less dangerous, but every kind of everything can also be a cause of our death. So therefore, we have to make the life meaningful and purposeful from today and from now on this very seat. So therefore, this understanding of impermanence is something that will put us in the right direction, put us on turning our mind towards the Dharma. So it's like that to to teach and to study Dharma is not like that we have too much time and we have nothing to do and therefore we are doing this. It's not like that. What I talk now, what I say now, is also because I have nothing else to do. It's not like that. I'm trying to talk to you because I think it's very important. So you also have to see that this is something really important and useful. It's not that, if I understand it, it's okay. If I don't understand, it's okay. I just have to pass the time. I just have to sit through this time and then it's okay. That kind of motivation is not okay. The Dharma is this. In Indian, it's Dharma. The Dharma word means 10 different things. The word Dharma in Sanskrit means 10 different things. When we talk about Dharma as the practice, that's been translated into Tibetan as Chu. Chu means to transform or to change, to make it better. If a machine goes wrong, then you have to kind of have a toolbox and you have to open it and then you have to make it right. So in the same way, we have to change our mind also, or transform our mind also. It's not that these days we can also operate our face and make our face more beautiful, make our implant the hair on our head and make our white hair into black hair. It's not like that. It's not trying to make our face more beautiful or to implant hair on our head and to make one of our organs or better. It's not like that. From Buddhist point of view, the transformation is transforming our mind. You cannot do it with any tools. The only way to transform our mind is by our mind, with our mind. You have to instruct, you have to advise your mind by your own mind. You have to consult, you have to counsel, you have to have meeting with your own mind. What is better, what is not good. You have to talk to it. You have to talk to yourself. Generally, you have to look and examine what's going on in your mind, whether it's doing well or what's not doing well, and you have to be responsible for what your mind is doing. In essence, you have to advise yourself, you have to suggest yourself, you have to lead yourself. And that's the way the Buddha Dharma is practiced. In our minds now, our minds sometimes feel good, sometimes not so good, not so right. Sometimes we seem to be doing something good, sometimes we seem to be doing something bad. There is nothing stable, there is nothing consistent. So if we listen to the advice, good advice, or do we listen to the bad advice, that we have to decide ourselves. It seems like, there's two people are talking to us. One person saying that you have to get angry, you have to be upset, and then another part of the mind is saying you cannot do that, you should not do it. You have to your mind more broad, you have to be more kind and compassionate. So when these two people or two aspects of your mind are talking to you, now you have to choose which advice you follow or which suggestions you follow. You have to make the decision. Then you have to make a commitment. Then you have to make a decision. This is what I'm going to do. You have to make the final decision. If you don't make this final decision, then sometimes you are listening to the good one, sometimes you are listening to the bad side, then it's unstable. If you do a positive deed, it doesn't become completely positive. First you do something positive, and then in the middle, and then maybe you are not doing it or doing something opposite. So then it doesn't become something complete or consistent in the beginning, middle, and end. So therefore, this is because we don't have a very clear decision or very clear understanding. And then to talk about Mintukpa, Akshobhya, I give a little bit of example. When I was in Tibet, I was a little bit short-tempered. Then when I came to India, then there were lots of kind of troubles. Then I became sometimes very easily kind of upset and angry. And then when I became interested in the Akshobhya practices, maybe I can't do much. I didn't know much practice, but I did some research in it. Then Sanjay Senchembo, with the big eye, the Mintukpa saw the Buddha called Big Eye Senchembo. Then he made this decision or made promise that until I become Buddha, I will not be angry to anybody. When I heard this, when I saw this, I thought like this. When Mintukpa was a very ordinary monk, then he made a very big decision. From this time till I become enlightened, he said. We think that from now till I die is very difficult. But that person made this big promise that from now till I become enlightened. Maybe I should make a promise that from today till tomorrow at least. Then to make this kind of a promise that from this time till I die. So this kind of thing I thought must be. I must do this. Then I made a kind of decision or a promise, whatever, or maybe I can say I made a prayer that from now till I die, I should not get angry as much as possible. I maybe cannot say I promise that kind of courage. Maybe we don't have. I don't have. But as much as possible, I should not get angry until I die. So when you make this kind of a commitment, when you make a commitment that body, speech, and mind, we have to we have to give body, speech, and mind as this kind of under the power of this power. Otherwise, body, speech, and mind would not listen. So our commitment has to be very strong, and we have to give in our body, speech, and mind. We should offer to this thought of commitment, and then only this commitment will have much more power. If that commitment doesn't have any power, then this commitment will not work, because then our body, speech, and mind will not listen. So I make my body, speech, mind. I kind of give over the power of my body, speech, and mind to this commitment, and I say, by body, by speech, by mind, I will do whatever I have promised, and I make this commitment. My body, speech, and mind becomes like the servant or the slave of this commitment. But sometimes we forget what commitment we have made. Therefore, for some months, we need to remember what commitment we made, at least once every day. For a few months, if we really make it a point to remember this commitment each day, then maybe even if we don't make this kind of daily remembering thing, it becomes part of our life. That time I thought like this. When I make this commitment, when you make this commitment, I think it will be very good if I record it, or if I make a video of it with my own words. Then when I'm about to get angry, then that my promise, the voice will come up kind of automatically. If there is something like that, it would be very good. It would be very useful, I think. But that kind of machine is not yet there. We have to record, and we have to put on. We have to put that the voice of our recording of our commitment in our own mind, and then we have to put it on when we are about to do something opposite to that commitment. This we have to do in our mind, because so far that machine is not yet created. In essence, when you say, like practice of Dharma is, as I said before, yesterday, for human beings, what is good and what is bad, what is beneficial and what is harmful, is something that we understand. The power of understanding that is something that the Dharma is to use that power, or to develop that power completely, and to use that power of our understanding to complete in a big way, in a complete way. That's the practice of the Dharma practice. So generally, basically, if you don't know how to practice Dharma, then sometimes people do strange things to practice Dharma. Some people that I know, some of my students, I know them, they say, when I practice Dharma, then within the family, there are different opinions. Some people don't like it, they say. In one way, that is possible. In another way, maybe we have to study why this happens. Sometimes when we say we practice Vajrayana, if you don't understand the real essence or the actual meaning of the Dharma, then the outside thing, the traditional thing, that becomes kind of the main thing or the most important thing. And then in order to practice Vajrayana, and then people kind of have to have this mala or with like skull caps, and then you have to have this thigh bone trumpet and things like that you bring. And then when other people see these things, your family members see this, then they feel that maybe you have kind of gone mad or crazy, or maybe you have met a teacher who is misleading you. It's really dangerous. They can become. We are kind of got used to it. We have got used to these instruments, but people who see these things first time might find it really strange. The Vajrayana sometimes is quite strange. Something quite strange and something crazy. Sometimes people think like that. The practice of Vajrayana should be something extraordinary, something strange, something kind of. So when it's the practice of Vajrayana is not something that's strange thing or something different or something strange. It's not that. It is something that is really related to your life, day-to-day life. Maybe I have to say it in a different way. I don't know what to say. Maybe I should not talk too much about Vajrayana. When we talk about different levels of yanas, sometimes we say small yana and big yana, and there are kind of big differences. You can explain that, but this big and small is not like big and small or high and low. It's not like the Kaju, Cheji, and Chongjik, it's elder and small. It's not the similar. That's not the same. When you big and small, then the big is like how powerful they are, how big they are, how popular they are. It's not like that. When you say Mahayana is something big, something good, and Hinayana something bad, it's not like that. Thikpa means something that you lift, that you can lift, you can carry. Therefore, when you make examples, then like elephants, and if you put a load on the load that you can put on an elephant, you cannot put it on a goat. In the same way, it's how big your aspiration is. There's nothing much more. The broadness of your mind, the breadness, how much responsible you want to take into your mind, how much power of responsibility. One is I take the responsibility to liberate myself, and another I take the responsibility to liberate all other beings. So therefore, one, how much you want to carry, how much responsibility you want to carry. And sometimes, Vajrayana and Secret Yana and things like that, sometimes people think, what instruments you have or what kind of things you use. Like you can practice Vajrayana without this Raksha mala or skull cap and all those kind of things. You can really very much practice Vajrayana without those things. Those things or those instruments are not important. Anybody can get those instruments. That's nothing. The real importance is very important. The important is what exactly to do the practice. So when the three yanas is basically the three precepts, and these three precepts are about how to deal with your negative emotions, how to deal with your kleshas. There are kind of three kleshas or five kleshas and things like. Uh, uh, During the Vinaya, the most important kind of focus is to attachment. And in the Bodhisattva Yana and the Bodhisattva precept, because it is the main practice is loving kindness, the compassion, so the main focus is hatred and anger. And in the Vajrayana is something that using the result as the path, so therefore to purify the to purify the impure view, impure experience. So therefore, to purify this. So therefore, when we talk about the wisdoms or the jnana, yeshi, then it is focusing on wisdom and to focus the ignorance. So which klesha you kind of deal with mainly or chiefly, but all are the same. All practice is how to work with your negative emotions or kleshas. So if you can find an antidote or find a way to deal with your negative emotions, then that is the practice. And the branches and other, if they are there or not there, doesn't matter. But the main thing is this, that you are dealing with you're working with your negative emotions or kleshas. And if that is there, then there is Dhamma practice. If that's not there, then it's not Dhamma practice. Therefore, I don't remember where I started. Whatever maybe the great masters of the past have said, whatever, if you understand one Dhamma, you put it into practice. If you understand two things, you practice in practice. You integrate it yourself. And if you don't integrate with yourself, if you don't use it, then it's not useful, even if you understand it. Sometimes people think that to practice Dhamma is to make you kind of happy, to make your mind a little bit more relaxed. Sometimes people think, that you are working in the city, you are very busy, and you have lots of stress. So then you have to practice. You have to go to a solitude place for a few days, and you kind of relax, try to rest your mind and bring some peace. You make your mind a little bit happier or relaxed. Some people think that's the only thing, that's the only practice of Dharma. That's also okay, that's good. But the Dharma practice is not just that. The Dharma practice is too small-minded. It's too... then, like today I'll go to take a bath, or I'll go to the spa. It's same. I'll have a massage today. So I go and then have a massage and then relax. Uh, you go and go to the spa, or then you have what is it called? Sauna. And because after a few days, then it's gone. There's nothing left. Uh, then again you are in the same place. That doesn't work in the long term. Therefore, the practice of Dharma is not like taking a drug. I heard that if you take a drug, then you become very happy for a while. I've never done that before. It's not that. What I say, Dharma is exercise. It's training. It's a important training. It's a strong training. There's an example I want to give. I don't know whether it's really the good example or not. When you make an example, it can't be same in all aspects. When you train the military training, when you get it military training, for instance, every day you train. In the same way, you train your mind again and again every day. It's not just relax yourself or just to kind of cool off for a while. It's not just that. You have to integrate it with conditions. Like you have to be able to resist the conditions. There's a story. There was a hermit who was in a cave meditating, and then a hunter came and he met this meditator. Then he said, "What are you doing?" He said, I'm practicing patience." Then the hunter said, "You eat my shit." And then the hermit got angry and says, "You eat it." But when you are when you create this situation which is very peaceful and things like that, then you feel very nice, you feel peaceful, and you think that, oh yes, I have lots of patience and things like that. But then when you get into the situation, in a special situation or condition, negative situation, then you will find that you don't have any patience. And that's not right, then it doesn't work. The patience is not like you just kind of forbear. It's like, like Shaolin monks become very strong, can kind of be very good fighter, very. Then you kind of beat with the. You can even hit with bricks, and it doesn't. So some people think that that's the patience. You can forbear anything. That's not what patience means. The real patience means if you have to really forbear it, that's not the real patience. Patience. You understand that your mind poisons are something a problem. It's completely faulty. There's nothing good. It's all the clashes are problem, and it's always giving trouble. So when you really see it, then as soon as this negative emotion arises, you really see that this is not good, this is completely wrong. So when you understand that, then Like you eat you you eat shit, somebody says, then immediately you get angry and say you eat it. Uh, you will never say that should I eat it or should I not eat shit. It's not there. It naturally, I don't want to eat it anyway. So in the same way, you, there's no need to think, there's no need to explain. I will not eat shit. In the same way, the the patience is when the negative emotions come, when the clashes arise, you you know completely. You completely deeply understand. So whenever these negative emotions arise, you don't own it. You don't, you know, mm, you immediately reject or you immediately, distance yourself with it. Uh, this, and then if you have to kind of say, oh, I need to get angry, I have no way other than getting angry like that, or I have the right to get angry. When that kind of understanding happens, then this is not the true uh, patience. So it has to come independently. It has to come automatically. It's to come joyfully, naturally. And that's that's the patience. Uh, the Dharma practice should not be always trying to kind of change it, trying to forbear and try to kind of I want to do this but I can't do this. It's not like a restriction. So therefore this understanding is very important. The real Dharma practice is there. This this thing that in this world, in this life, you have to actually see, you have to actually do, you have to actually, it's not something that's written in the books only. Like for instance, impermanence. Impermanence we know, we can see it. We really recognize it. There's nothing. It's just the truth, it's just the fact. So we have to really understand this Dharma practice is to find the truth, the facts. It's not like the practice Dharma is trying to bring something that's not true, that's not fact, but something different, something out of. Um, um, the- it's not useful to bring something or create something in your mind which is not the truth or which is not the fact. It's not like that. The Dhamma practice is to understand the truth, understand what is what, the fact, and then really accept that. And like Milarepa also, uh, he understood the nature of the samsara. He understood the nature of the negative actions. Um, because he understood very clearly the facts, and thereby he actually he practiced Dhamma and became great Siddha. In the same way, when Buddha taught Four Noble Truths, it's all like that. First he saw the sufferings of birth, death, illness, and old age, and all these things, and then he went to find the he found the results. So he understood the causes of the suffering, and thereby he came to understand. So when you say, the enlightenment is actually a big understanding, real understanding, complete understanding of how the things really are, or what the fact or truth is. That's what Bodhi is. That's what enlightenment is. Um, although there's lots of explanations on this, but mainly it's like that. The real fact, the real truth, how the worldly um, the worldly facts, that we have to understand. Sometimes the facts of the world, the facts of the thing, we cannot understand it unless there is Dharma instructions. And through the instructions of Dharma, or through the Dharma, then we understand the life. What Dharma talks about is not something separate, not something different, not something created by our mind. It's just trying to introduce, trying to tell us what our life is all about, what our world is about. Now, if we talk about Mintukpa a little bit, a short, actually it's same as the Dewa chain. The Sangye Mintukpa, the Akshobhya, Buddha Akshobhya, maybe actually I should explain it tomorrow. Now I'm just going to read it. Yesterday, yesterday some people were getting sleepy. Today I've brought the Kanjur volume, so you can sleep as much as you like. This is the the Sutra of Kunchuk Tsepa. There are 100,000 chapters. It's not translated. There are only 49 chapters. It is said that originally it had 100,000 chapters. Now this is from there. It is in the volume number Ka, volume number 2. It's in about around 70 pages. After 25 years, Buddha became enlightened, and when Buddha was in Rajagir, because of the blessing of the Buddha, then Shariputra asked this. The Bodhisattvas of the past, their aspiration, he asked about the aspirations, about the joys, about the Bodhisattvas of the past. If you talk about that, it will be a great inspiration, and we will learn much about what to do in the future. And thereby, to answer to this question, then Buddha talked. Buddha taught this sutra. It is said like this. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the past, how they generated bodhicitta. Kosha is armor, to put on the armor. When you put on the armor, then the weapons that is thrown by others will not injure you, protect you from. And sometimes the patience is understood as armor. The Buddha is in the Shakyapambiru or the Girdakudivi. There are 2,500 monks, and then he was requested this, and then Buddha was very happy, and then he answered the question. He said that there is a world called Ngunbagawa. There is a Buddha called Big Eye, long time before. Then he was teaching 6 parameters to his followers, to the bodhisattvas. While he was teaching, and then the Shariputra thought, this place, where it is, where it should be. Then when he thought like this, then Buddha understood that. Then he said, this Ngömbagawa is from here. If you go into the east, if you pass 1,000 Buddha fields, others say that it is after 1,000 kind of Buddha fields, or some say that at the end of this 1,000, or maybe it's all these 1,000 Buddha fields or whatever. So he said that the Ngömbagawa is there. There is a Buddha called Big Eye. He's teaching 6 parameters. When he's teaching the 6 parameters, then one monk stood up. The robe, put it on his right shoulder, then he kneeled and then folded his hands, and then he said this to the Buddha Big Eye. I want to practice, I want to study the Bodhisattva's path. And then the Buddha Big Eye said, if you want to practice Bodhisattva's way, it's very difficult, because Bodhisattvas, if a Bodhisattva practice the Bodhisattva's path, then you cannot get angry to all the beings. You have to be totally, unmoved, or your mind has to be undisturbed by anybody. So therefore it's difficult to practice Bodhisattva's path. And then this bhikkhu, this Gelong said, I, in the future, without any deceit or without any kind of, I honestly, he said, I will generate the bodhicitta, and from now till I attain enlightenment, I will never get angry to become angry to anybody. I will never want to harm anybody. I will never be disturbed. My mind will not be disturbed by anybody. If this doesn't happen, then if I did that, I would have cheated all the Buddhas of all the Buddha fields. He said that. He made this promise. Then it is said in the Akshobhya's prayer, like 18 prayers Then he made these 18 prayers. You have this? No? This? It's actually in here. And the 8 great prayers. The main prayer is as was before, I want to generate bodhicitta. And from now till until I attain enlightenment, I will not be angry at anybody. I will not want to harm anybody. I will not be. My mind will never be disturbed. And other than that, the others big 7 prayers or commitments, including this, there was 8 commitments or the promises. Maybe I have no. There's maybe tomorrow we can talk about this. Then when he made these 8 prayers, then the Buddha, another monk thought at that time. He thought this monk is making such a big aspiration, such a strong armor he's wearing, that he's made such a. It's a wonderful. What a great commitment. Then he says he is akshobhya, he is unmoved. That came into his thoughts. Then maybe he talked about this. Maybe he mentioned he's really unmoving. So everybody kind of talked about it. He is really undisturbed. He is undisturbed. And then the Buddha Big Eye also said, it's very good that you made this commitment. It's very, very good. Therefore, when you are practicing on the Bodhisattva path, your name will be Mintukpa or the unmoved. When you become enlightened also, your name will be Mintukpa or Akshobhya or undisturbed. So he gave the name. Then he became, he rejoiced at this name. Because he made this promise not to get disturbed, thereby he got this name called undisturbable or Mintukpa. Therefore, that Buddha became that bhikkhu, that Gelong became Bodhisattva Mintukpa. Then again, this Bodhisattva Mintukpa in front of this Buddha Big Eye. Then he said that I will do as I have committed. Each step I make, I will be remembering the Buddhas. And every life, I will become a monk. Like that, he made 18 prayers, so and so on. The 4 kind of assemblies of Buddha, that means Gelong, the Bhikkhu, Bhikshuni, and Upasaka, and male and female. I will never criticize them, he said. So things like that, there are 18 prayers he made. uh, 18 practices, 7 main practice these prayers. When he made that, then at the end he said, as I have made commitments, all these commitments will be complete if it is true. If then the if I when I put the big when I put the big toe on the earth, then it will create an earthquake. It will shake all the earth. He said, if I am true, if my promises are true, and then he put his right toe, the right big toe on the earth, and then the earth really shook. But this shaking the earth is not like earthquake that is destroying lots of things. When the Buddha's activities happen, there will be shaking earth, but it will not disturb anybody. It will not harm anybody. There's a avatar. There's this film, this film called Avatara. When I saw this big tree, I thought maybe it is something like this in the Ngömba Gawe Shinkam. There is supposed to be a big tree which is like hundreds of thousands, tall, kilometers tall. So when he became enlightened, then he gave teachings. At the end, according to the as requested by Shariputra, then the Buddha Sakyamuni actually invited Buddha Mintukpa, Buddha Akshobhya to that place, and then everybody at that time gathered there could actually see the Akshobhya Buddha and his followers. What we have to practice is we have to practice the life of Akshobhya. We have to do what he did. We have to follow his footsteps. That's the practice of Akshobhya, that we have to follow his footsteps. We have to act as according to his way of acting. It's not that we have to practice everything that he did, but out of his all practices and promises, out of them, what we can do, and then we will do that. It's not that we do everything. First, we have to see whether we can do it or not. We cannot just say that we will not be able to do right from the beginning. That's also not good. We have to try to do, try to practice, try to live the way he lived. Then we have to try, and if we can, that's very good. If we can't practice it, okay, it's okay, we cannot practice, but we pray that we will be able to practice that in the future. The one special quality of Akshobhya that's different from other Buddhas is that his big armor of compassion and loving kindness, that I'm never going to get angry with anybody, and nobody is going to disturb my mind. I will never feel, kind of thought of harm to anybody. So if we can do that, then you are really practicing the Akshobhya. Like for instance, when you practice Avalokiteshvara, because Avalokiteshvara is the embodiment of compassion, so if you can practice compassion, then we practice Avalokiteshvara. This is very important. When we say about Yedam, it's not like I just kind of become friends with somebody. The real practice of Dhamma is that to try to develop, to try to bring in those qualities of that Buddha in us. They have already become enlightened. We don't have to, worship them, or we don't have to give anything. We don't need to please them. They have enough. They are already accomplished. They don't need anything. So when we talk about making offerings or making prostrations, it's not for them, it's for us. Whether we make prostration or make offering, it doesn't matter to them at all. It's only, that's what you have to think, very important. So when we, how to be born into the Amitabha, the Akshobhya's Buddha realm is also same as before. It's not just by doing something positive, just ordinary positive is not enough to be born into the Akshobhya's pure realm. We have to practice as we discussed yesterday. If we, actually, maybe tomorrow also we'll say something about this. Then this is meditation again, and this is the last day of meditation practice during the Kajumelam sessions. So today's meditation is the condition of dedication and prayer. We have already discussed this yesterday. There's not much to say. We already discussed the difference between dedication and prayer. The prayer, we can just make any prayer. But dedication is first we have to create a positive deed, and that positive deed we need to dedicate for some purpose. We can, that prayer, we can make prayers even if we don't have any particular positive practice. That's the difference between prayer and dedication. The Mönlam is also very important. Prayer is also important. Buddha, when he first generated bodhicitta, and then he practiced for 3 countless eons, and then he became enlightened. There is nothing that they did not did anything. They did not do anything that's not beneficial for the beings. They did not dedicate. There was nothing they didn't dedicate. Because of those, so when they become enlightened, then all their activities became spontaneously happened, because of their prayers, because of their dedication. So when they became Buddha, they didn't have to make lots of efforts. All the activities happened naturally because of the aspiration, prayer, and dedication. So when one first generates bodhicitta, then that bodhicitta also is in a kind of a prayer. Uh, the bodhicitta is also like a prayer, because I want to bring um, lasting peace and happiness to all the beings. It's a big kind of a mind, a big prayer, big dedication or big aspiration. The bodhicitta is so important or so powerful is because of this, the prayer. And for a long time, for 3 countless eons, the Buddha practiced without without tirelessness. They practiced the positive deeds. They practiced 6 paramitas. This is also happened because of the aspiration, because of his prayers. It is said that if there is one thing, then all the things of the bodhisattvas is like, all the Buddha Dharma is like placed on your palm, and that is bodhicitta, the prayer, the great prayer. If that aspiration is there, then all the Buddha Dharma is there as if on your right palm. Yes. That's why the aspiration is so important. And therefore, in this special place, Bodh Gaya, we arrived here. We already discussed this before, so you have already understood. I don't need to repeat again because of this place, time. We talk about the 5 auspicious things together, 10, 100 auspicious things coming together. So this time we need to make really great aspiration for all the sentient beings, countless sentient beings, that we may become, all the sentient become enlightened, or they may have the lasting peace without unreturnable great happiness. That we have to make this aspiration now. That also, all those beings that we have relation, and there are some people that was never been able to be helped by the great masters of the past, the Buddhas of the past, the Bodhisattvas of the past. So those people, I would like to, I want to liberate them. That is very important. It's not just become enlightened, and also it's very important that we pray that everybody become enlightened. I also become enlightened. It is said that if an ordinary person try to help people, little bit help you can do, but most of the things will become purposeless. The Adesh Dipankara said that if you really want to help people, then first you have to have this ngweshi, you have to have this clairvoyance. Otherwise, then you don't know what they need and what's needed and what is wanted. You can help a little bit, but you cannot help a lot. A great help you cannot do as much as you want. So if you really want to help others, you have to have shamatha meditation, because you can see then through But if a great bodhisattva helps beings, then most of them becomes useful and some does not become useful. But if Buddha does help to the others people, then there is no one becomes useless. Nothing becomes useless. Everything that the Buddha does will be useful and helpful. So because the Buddha knows everything, Buddha becomes all-knowing. Buddha is an all-knower and all-powerful. The all-knowing also has many different one one foreigner asked me that one person knows everything. That I don't believe, but
路遇的차로 시제지 시험듯이 선지도 로지도 디슈체다 신도 마다 미지기 디슈체다 시에서 이거 다는 이 점도 안에 대표에서 지도에서 게임도 상계에서 내나로 지차도 안에 샘다 가사 스타트에만 이 지구 자수 이 부산 아주 신기도 가고 레사지.
And I said that the if you the person said that if you said that the mind knows everything, I can understand, but one person knows everything, I cannot believe it. Then I said that, well, the person and the mind cannot be separated, is one. So therefore, if somebody wants to if somebody needs to become enlightened, then the Buddha knows everything that needs that is needed to become enlightened, a person become enlightened. That's why also sometimes it is said all knower, knowing. We, even if we want to help, we don't know exactly. If you want to help a mosquito, I don't know what to do. When I was drinking, having a soup, the one fly jumped into my soup. And then I took it out because it's not yet dead. When a person kind of drowns, then you have to kind of do the, you have to do the CPR. But you cannot do it you cannot do it. Then I took the ear plug and put it on his chest. He got up, but I don't know whether it was the right thing to do or not. I didn't know what to do. Then I thought that really you have to become Buddha, because otherwise you cannot help. That's the feeling I got. So it's not that we don't have clairvoyance to see others. We even don't know how to, how to investigate or how to kind of everything we just project. We don't even can properly analyze. We can't even properly analyze what is right. It's just like my feeling. I don't like this. I like that person. It's nothing. Not even a clear analytical mind. So therefore, we are just running around blindly. And this, how can I help others? It's very difficult to help others. To help others, you have to be very clever, very clear, and also you have to have a great aspiration day and night. Somebody like that. There's nothing like that. So it's very difficult to help other beings. So therefore, it is really important. It is difficult, but if we can get there, it is so important. It's really important. So therefore, then we meditate for 1 minute only now. It becomes shorter and shorter. Only 1 minute is left now. Now you make lots of aspiration, one-pointedly.